right-wingers continue to argue that the existence of mass voter fraud, while pushing harsher sentences for those guilty of doing not so mass voter fraud. So now, that's interesting, right? So look, we've already known that there is no mass voter fraud. There have been singular instances of voter fraud. And by the way, the story is about a couple of them, actually. Now, in the late summer of 2020, Bruce Bartman, he's the Bartman. He went to Pennsylvania's voter registration website and signed up his mother and mother-in-law to vote. Now, there's this one problem, of course. They were dead. Both of them. They were dead. So, look, we got dead voters, right? Now, you could say, well, see, the right one, we were right. You had dead voters. Okay, but these dead voters voted for Trump. A few months later, Bartman, who was white, requested a mail-in ballot for his late mother and cast her vote for Donald Trump. Shocker. Bartman was then arrested that December and charged with perjury and unlawful voting. Again, voter fraud. Months later, he pleaded guilty, admitted that he made a stupid mistake, was sentenced to 5 years of probation, and barred from serving on a jury or voting for 4 years. In fact, the local district attorney said at the time, this is Jack Stolzheimer, quote, "There's not public benefit to him being incarcerated." Okay, so probation, right? Probation. So now you might be thinking, okay, look, yes, he did intentional voter fraud, but he was caught, of course, punished. The system works, right? Well, yes, the system does work, but unfortunately, it doesn't seem to work evenly or equally. So in fact, there was another case here, a very high-profile case in Memphis, where you had a Black Lives Matter activist named Pamela Moses. Pamela Moses, well, also filed a fraudulent vote. So now, a few years previously, Moses, who was black, lost the right to vote after committing a felony. Of course, nobody actually had removed Moses from the voter rolls, or, and this is important, informed her that she could not vote. So now, in 2019, when state officials began looking into her eligibility to vote, a probation officer had signed a certificate saying that she had completed her sentence and was eligible to vote again. So guess what? She had applied to do so. Unfortunately, when they looked into it, they realized, oopsie, we made a mistake. She cannot vote. And so doing so, well, that means she would commit voter fraud. So now that is a crime. Now, that said, corrections officers admitted that it was a mistake. They didn't get punished. Moses, however, was recently convicted in November and sentenced in January to 6 years and 1 day in prison. So now, going back to Bartman. Bartman gets probation for literally doing what Republicans warn you against. Oh, we got dead people that are voting. Okay. But she was told, hey, you served your sentence. You are now able to vote. Go ahead and vote. And what happens? She gets prison time. That's the situation. That's the justice, just so-called justice system at work. All right. So now, that said, I said it was a whole high-profile case, and they got a lot of attention. And so, as a result, thankfully, a judge ordered a new trial. That said, it should not have taken that kind of outrage. Imagine if it hadn't gone viral. Imagine if nobody had paid attention to this. Then she'd be in prison for 6 years and 1 day. Needlessly, while Bartman is on probation, he's out. So now, Moses' case, by the way, and it's not the only one, there's another case, Crystal Mason. Crystal Mason is a Texas woman who was sentenced to 5 years for voting while on federal supervised release. That is similar to probation. She had done that in 2016. Probation officials testified that they never told Mason that she couldn't vote, and her ballot was never even counted. So no way to swing an election, right? But a judge found her guilty of illegally voting anyway. An appeal is currently pending at Texas's highest criminal court. And last summer, Texas officials, once again Texas, also arrested Hervis Rogers, who was black, for voting while on probation for a felony. Rogers, who received national attention after waiting 7 hours in line to vote in 2020, also says he didn't know that he was ineligible to vote. His case is currently pending, and he could face several years in prison. Now, again, you compare that, like, those cases are terrible, right? Now, you compare that with some other cases, right? So these are all black, but the cases I'm about to read you are all white people. A 72-year-old Republican last year in Pennsylvania was sentenced to probation after putting on sunglasses and trying to impersonate his son at the polls. An Arizona 64-year-old woman pleaded guilty to forging her deceased mother's signature on a mail-in ballot. She was sentenced to probation and could face up to 90 days in jail when she is sentenced in March. In Nevada, a Republican who voted using his dead wife's ballot and then lied about it. There was a whole national media storm around this person where he claimed that, no, it was the Democrats that stole their vote when he was the one who actually did it. Pleaded guilty and was sentenced to probation. And in 2018, and again, a lot of these cases are from different places in the country, about a month after Mason was sentenced, in the same county, a white justice of the peace pleaded guilty to forging signatures to get on the ballot when he was running for office. Actual election fraud. He was sentenced to probation. You notice the pattern here? Notice that? White Republicans, they do voter fraud, literally impersonating, other people, dead people, to vote for Trump. Republicans, they do that knowingly. They get off easy with probation. Black people, who tend to, vote for Democrats, well, they get their rights taken away, and they get huge prison sentences. Now, they don't even know, because of the way that our system is structured, they don't even know that they had lost their voting rights. In fact, I've got some statistics here that are disastrous. Over 1/5 of black people voting age in Moses' home state of Tennessee, nearly 175,000 people, they're unable to vote because of a felony conviction. This is according to an estimate by the Sentencing Project. Around 70% of Tennessee's population is black. However, black people account for around 40% of those who are disenfranchised because of a felony conviction in the state. Now remember, by the way, you look at the history of the criminal justice system in these states, in the country overall. You have black people that will do the same crimes, but get punished more harshly than white counterparts. And again, I say it for these same crimes. They do not get pled down to misdemeanors. They end up being felonies. A lot of it's nonviolent drug offenses that you have. They lose their voting rights and are not told. And so when they do get out, they serve their time. They go to try to vote. What happens? Well, this is what happens. They get caught, they go to prison. Even worse. So that's what happens. And so now, very, very big problem. By the way, more here. Nationally, around 2.3% of the voting age population cannot vote because of a felony. For black Americans, it's 6.3%. So keep that in mind. Now, of course, there is the prosecutor here. After this case of Mason, after her case went viral, the prosecutor's like, whoa, hold on, whoa. Let me give you some details. You see, it turns out we tried to give her a plea deal and she wouldn't take it. She rejected it. She decided to go to trial. Now, a plea deal, of course, and they would have pled her down to a misdemeanor. That means you admitted the crime in order to get that lesser sentence, avoid a trial, right? Now, why should she have pled guilty to something that she didn't knowingly do? Now, and I'm saying this as she was explicitly told, hey, you can go ahead and do this. You are now able to vote. You have served your time. Go ahead and, do your patriotic duty to go and vote, right? Turns out she couldn't. Not her fault that she didn't know. Not her fault. So why would you plead guilty to doing that? To doing exactly what you thought you should have been able to do? She did nothing wrong. So I understand completely why she was like, no, fuck that. No, I reject that. I'm not going to take a plea deal. My case is obvious that it wasn't my fault. Unfortunately, when she went to trial, they didn't agree. They didn't agree at all. So now, here's a DA in Memphis who prosecuted Moses. Here's what she said. Quote, I gave her a chance to plead to a misdemeanor with no prison time. She requested a jury trial instead. She set this unfortunate result in motion. Yes, it's her fault. And so a jury of her peers heard the evidence, her peers, quote unquote, and convicted her. You see, it's not our fault. It's her fault. Because she wouldn't admit to doing something that she didn't do. And so we destroyed her. We just destroyed her. We wanted to send a message. How dare you? How dare you reject our generosity? We offered you a plea deal. We were so kind and so nice. Know your place. Know your place. And by the way, that just doesn't just happen to black people. Yes, it does more often than not. But it happens to a lot of people in the justice system because it turns out that you have prosecutors that will be angry that you don't, plead guilty, that you don't take their plea deal. They take it personally. And so they're like, oh yeah? You're not going to take my plea deal. All right, fine. Now we're going to come after you with a full force. And that's it. It's horrible. It's just absolutely horrible. These same prosecutors, by the way, also defended the sentences for Moses and Mason by pointing to their prior criminal records. Well, see, they're criminals. So, they belong in prison anyway, so, that's it. There you go. Absolute racism. Disgusting. Disgusting. Look, once you've served your time, hell, why shouldn't prisoners also have the right to vote? Just because you committed a crime doesn't mean you should lose a fundamental right to determine the outcome of your country, right? These elections. Oh, but you understand, they're going to vote for judges who are, and for people who are less tough on crime. So it might actually help them. Oh my God, can you imagine a politician actually helping you? Whoa, oh no, we better put a stop to that. We better prevent that from happening. We can't have that. We can't have elected officials helping the people that they represent. No, it's ridiculous. Absolute ridiculousness. The goal here, and by the way, this is Bennett Capers. Here's what they said. This is a former federal prosecutor who now teaches law at Fordham University. This is a perfect quote. They said that the Moses case sort of sends a message that, by the way, don't even think about going to the polls. And that's exactly what it is. They do not want black people going to the polls. That's it. That's it. They want to stop people from voting because they might vote a certain way. They might actually vote for things that might help them. Maybe even for criminal justice reform. Can't have that. Oh, no, we can't have that at all. No. No. Once again, this is another example of a racist institution that still exists in this country. And they say, well, critical race theory, we can't teach that. We can't possibly teach that. Well, this is why, because they don't want people to know that this stuff is happening and that it is, in a lot of these cases, part of the old racist institution to keep black people down.